Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for January 18th. January 18th is the 18th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 347 days remaining to the end of the year, 348 in leap years. Today's word is Thespian. Thespian can be an adjective or a noun. As a noun, it means actor or actress, and as an adjective, the word thespian has to do with matters relating to theatrical drama, matters of stage, screen, and film. You may occasionally see the word thespian capitalized after its namesake Thespis. Thespis was a semi-legendary poet from the 6th century BC, about 534 BC, which is about 25.5 to 2,560 years ago. Thespis didn't exactly invent acting on stage, but he is credited with being the first known actor to portray an individual character on stage and with inventing theatrical touring. He visited various cities carrying his costumes, masks, and props in a horse-drawn wagon, and while he was probably not the very first actor, there's good reason to believe that Thespis changed the way stories were told, basically inventing theater as we know it today. This is where we get the word thespian, which has come to be another name for actors and actresses. As I mentioned, Thespis lived in the 530s BC. First known use of the word thespian as an adjective is in about 1567 and as a noun in 1827. Thespian. And with that, let's go back to the 1700s when a group of ships known as the First Fleet set out from England. This was a fleet of 11 ships, and they were bringing the first European settlers to Australia. This fleet, under the command of Captain Arthur Phillip, was composed of 2 Royal Navy vessels, 3 store ships, 6 convict transports, and over 1,400 people in all. They would travel 24,000 kilometers, 15,000 miles, and take over 250 days to eventually arrive in Botany Bay, New South Wales, where it was planned that a penal colony would be the first European settlement in Australia. And so it is that the first elements of the First Fleet, carrying 736 convicts from Great Britain to Australia, arrived at Botany Bay on January 18, 1788. Still in Australia, but a grandfather's age later, Wesley College was established in Melbourne, Australia on January 18, 1866. An X-ray generating machine was exhibited for the first time by a man named Henry Louis Smith on January 18, 1896. In July of 1976, the annual Legionnaires Convention took place in Philadelphia. There were more than 2,000 people in attendance, mostly men. 3 days after the convention ended, some of those men began dying of what at first appeared to be heart attacks. They all complained of feeling really tired, chest pain, and congested lungs. Of a total of 182 cases, 149 had been convention attendees, and 33 were people who either worked at the hotel or had been in the area. The victims ranged in age from 39 to 82. In a week's time, 130 people, mostly men, had been hospitalized. 25 had died. Before it was all over, more than 200 people would fall ill and 34 would die, a little over a 15% fatality rate. Turned out to be a pathogenic bacteria that proliferates in certain watery conditions. In this case, the bacteria had become established in water associated with the hotel's air conditioning unit on the roof of the building. The contaminated water would vaporize and fall to the ground where people on the street breathed it in and became infected. It was certainly alarming that so many people were affected, and with that 15+% death rate, medical experts and researchers were hot to find answers. As I mentioned, that convention was in July of 1976, and on January 18, 1977, the causative agent was identified as a previously unknown bacterium, which they named Legionella, after the Legionnaires. Since then, dozens of species of Legionella bacteria have been identified, is nearly always distributed by concentrated water contamination. It was particularly virulent in the Legionnaires' case because the water was made into a vapor form and people breathed it in. David Crosby, born David Van Cortlandt Crosby on August 14, 1941. He got involved in music in his late teens, early 20s, co-founded the Byrds in 1964, Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1968. Neil Young joined Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1969. All three groups, the Byrds, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, were, are, and forever will be notable for amazing harmonies. Through dozens of albums and even more singles, David Crosby was involved in making music that influenced and shaped a generation. He experienced problems with drugs and alcohol, got into some legal trouble. I believe he did some prison time along the way for one thing or another. Underwent a liver transplant, had type 2 diabetes, but he came through shining on the other side of it all. All things considered, it's amazing that he lived as long as he did, working right up until the end. David Crosby passed away on January 18, 2023, at the age of 81. David Crosby. When I first saw David Crosby's name on the list for January 18th, I thought about something from the Byrds or Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Wanting to talk about a song that he wrote or co-wrote, today's song is Hero by David Crosby. Co-written with Phil Collins, who also sings backup, plays several backing instruments, and produced it, Hero appears on David Crosby's 1993 album, Thousand Roads, and was also released as a single in 1993. Hero by David Crosby. Link in the description. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That playlist lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page. It's called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.